announced a couple days ago that Notre Dame and Clemson have agreed to a 12-year scheduling agreement. Their words of 2037 to 2038 seasons, they're going to be playing each other in back-to-back annual fixtures. And I think there's definitely a lot of consequences that I think are beneath the surface. But at the very least, in one regard, it gives Notre Dame another, super strong opponent that they have every year. And, correct me if I'm wrong too. I've heard contradicting things from ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and the reports that I've seen, but it's my understanding that this game covers one of the 5 ACC games that Notre Dame has to play every year. So I don't know if you know what happened with that too, but I would definitely like to know your thoughts on this scheduling agreement too, because it seems like it's just so mutually beneficial for both Notre Dame and Clemson too, but also so consequential too. Now that the ACC is about to get into this revenue sharing based on viewership and all that stuff after the settlement with Clemson and Florida State and the ACC.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if Jim Phillips knows if it counts either. I saw a David Hale report a few days ago that it did not count. Earlier today, I guess, yeah, it's today on the 14th or 15th, sorry. Jim Phillips he made a comment to Brett McMurphy that
That's what I saw.
it would count, but in the years that they play, I'm not too sure how it's going to work. Hopefully, if it were me kind of dictating it, it would count on the years that they're scheduled to play, but on the years that they're not scheduled to play, it wouldn't count.
Right.
For Clemson, I mean, this is Clemson ahead of the ball again. This is the smartest thing they've done scheduling wise in a very long time. ACC, we're going to a viewership equals money platform. That's what I like to call it. And more teams the better viewership you have, man, the more you're going to get. And Clemson, they're not hurting on viewership. They're pretty consistently been the number one team in the league when they're good on viewership, even above Florida State. But those Notre Dame Clemson games, they bring in on an average, I believe the number is 8.5 million viewers, which is nothing to scoff at. That is more than what some ACC teams get watched in a total year.
Like the Wake
Just being,
Forest, the Boston Colleges of the world. That's definitely more than what they do, but probably
yeah.
double.
And then you look at that from the Notre Dame side of the house. That is more games that can be put on Peacock. Notre Dame, they've started doing the shift now with NBC where they put their bigger games on Peacock. For the main reason I know about it, I'm a Louisville fan. When Louisville Notre Dame play on ESPN, it averages about 6.5 million viewers. They played on Peacock last year, which that really hurt Louisville if we were in the current format of viewership equals pay, because that is a huge, massive viewership chunk that you're missing out on. But with Clemson, they're continuing to assure themselves. They're going to have their non-con of Notre Dame and South Carolina, FCS, and probably lower level G5. That's a great non-con. That's a non-con you're going to get viewership from right there. On top of that, playing your typical ACC watch schools like Florida State, Louisville, sometimes Miami, sometimes Virginia Tech. So it's a great move by Clemson. I think it's something that you could see like other ACC schools trying to get on, but I don't know if there's really a lifeboat to get on right now. Your other schools you think about from that higher viewership standpoint in the ACC. Clemson, well, they play an SEC school out of conference every year. Now they're also going to play Notre Dame. Florida State plays a very good, very competitive non-con every year. They typically play 2 SEC schools. They'll play Florida, or then they'll play, an LSU or an Oklahoma or an Alabama. They're very aggressive. You look at Louisville, they play Kentucky every year in the non-con. Kentucky has awful viewership, so it's not like that really helps. But then you look at their forward schedule, they have series with Georgia, they have series with Texas A&M lined up. Miami, very similar to Florida State, where they're going to try to play Florida, or else they're going to play another SEC school every year. Those schools, your top 4 for viewership, they're settled. Like they're fine. They're good. They would love to add more, but at the end of the day, there's just not very many Notre Dames out there that can really help. This is really going to affect, your Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, Georgia Tech schools. Well, maybe not Georgia Tech. They have Georgia. They're fine with the Georgia game. But that North Carolina, the Tobacco Road contingent, what I like to call them, that's who this affects. They don't have a traditionally strong non-con. They have very weak viewership. They play amongst themselves a lot. They even play amongst themselves in the non-con now, if I'm not mistaken. I think Virginia and Wake Forest started up a non-con series, if I'm not
Yeah, I
mistaken.
did. I did hear about that. I think that starts up this year. I'm pretty sure.
Which, I mean, that's great for tradition, but my goodness, is that silly for viewership? If that's what you want. Um, it's an ever evolving time in the ACC. You're going to see schools, they're going to be more vocal and outspoken about what time slots they get, what programs they're put on, what networks they're on. It's going to be difficult, and at the end of the day, the easiest way for a program to navigate all this is just be good at football. I mean, that's
Start investing too.
yeah, yeah, that's the easiest way to draw in viewership. Me, a Louisville guy, obviously I know the Louisville behind it, but Louisville has pretty damn good viewership. We average about 2 million per game, which is on par with the middle of the SEC. And we don't do that because we are a major university or because we have a major fan base. We do that because we consistently win 8 to 9 games a year. And ESPN and ABC say, "Hey, well, wait a minute. We got a 7-1 Louisville playing a 7-1 Miami. We should probably put that game on ABC." And
Exactly.
then you get viewership. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to get off track, but with the Notre Dame Clemson thing, it's very forward thinking by both schools. They're both forwarding themselves on viewership. I just I don't know where the other schools kind of, the other ACC schools go from here. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know where they exactly go from here because there's not a lot of those lifeboats out there. And even if
it's going to trickle down to other conferences too. You brought up a great point, like the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten, they're going to have to start having conversations. And I know I talked about this off camera, but like I said, I'm a traditionalist. I like seeing the rivalries every year. Like I was doing an episode in Northwestern, and for the first time since 1928, Northwestern and Iowa aren't playing each other. And I know that may not be very consequential in the grand scheme of things, but for the local fans who actually watch every week and maybe invest in their NIL collective, like those are the kind of differences that you're subtly going to see as these scheduling agreements happen, as these revenue streams happen, as these different avenues of monetizing college football happens, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and for ACC specific fans,
Yeah,
what everyone's going to be watching in the next few weeks, the SEC has spring meetings in Sandestin. I believe it's next week. All eyes are going to be on that because if the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule, that is going to really mess with a lot of schools in the ACC. Those out of conference games are going to get canceled. For example, we have multiple, at least, and I'm sorry, I'm very centric on the Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, Miami area. So I
Florida State,
apologize.
Alabama are week 1 this year, so that's the first one that comes to mind for me too, for example.
But all 4 of those schools have series lined up with SEC schools on top of their SEC rivalry games that they play every single season. If the SEC goes to 9, first off, those series will probably get canceled. And depending on what school we're talking about in the SEC, their yearly series could get canceled very easily. Again, Louisville centric, the Kentucky game ain't happening if they go to 9 games. Kentucky doesn't want to play it.
There's only because they have you have the Laffer game versus Eastern Kentucky every year. Then you have a tune-up game, and then you're going to have one special game every year, and that's your 12 right there.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of looking there. What I would love to see happen is if the SEC wants to go to 9, I think that'd be great. Some sort of a scheduling agreement from ESPN. Because I don't think ESPN wants to lose those games either. Those are very good TV draws for ESPN, and ESPN's in the business of making money.
Exactly. There's a reason why they've had Chris Fowler and Kurt Herbstreit do SEC games every single week, even though we all like to pretend like we have a blindfold under our eyes and we're all supposed to pretend like that's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. So watch that if you're an ACC fan. Just watch out to see what's happening in Sandestin. And, the ACC, this is a league with all the changes you're making in rev share. Yeah, the top half of the conference is really excited. On top 5 to 6 schools in the conference are really excited because they're going to be making more money. But the bottom half of the conference, you could see some changes. And, it's going to be one of those long-term things to see how do we go about this? How is this going to change? What does this look like in 10 years? But, the wheels of conference realignment never stop moving.
The doggy dog world, my friend.
Yeah. Everybody wants to make a little more money. Especially with now a $20 million expenditure every year on top. People want to make money.
Exactly.